The distinctive style of the Soviet poster art was coined during times of war and struggle. It was always laconic, expressive, and straightforward. Thus, let's discuss how political climate changed and influenced the designs of the posters throughout the time. Soviet posters first appeared during the Proletarian Revolution in Russia. They were a vital tool during the Civil War. They delivered Communist Party slogans to the masses and called on workers and peasants to fight for freedom and justice against the bourgeoisie. Many posters were restricted to black and red. Red was identified with revolutionary elements, particularly flags, workers' shirts, and peasant blouses. Black was used for the main drawing and is a solid color for the clothes of the opposing side, such as capitalists and priests.
They imagine that serious political questions are decided by voting. As a matter of fact, they are decided by class war.
After the Civil Revolution, posters were commissioned from some of the biggest artists in the Soviet Union and encompassed many different revolutionary aesthetics in order to promote communist values related to hard work, fairness, and education. Education was promoted in particular as the education provided by the state promoted Stalin's cult of personality, which was crucial in asserting his control and power over the people. Later on, in the 30s, the posters that would encourage and promote tourism become very popular as well. In terms of design, they lack the dominant red color of communist movement, but have an incredibly bright and vivid color palette. The designs are exceptionally beautiful as well. Thus, the posters were aimed to improve the image of the USSR and lure visitors. The posters also badged the greed associated with capitalism since it went against the ideology of communism and collectivized society. Besides, by stating that the capitalism is detrimental, the state was able to decrease the income of the workers by paying them less and finance the industrialization.
Приятно ход событий, он как сенатор стал. Чего не может только наделать капитал.
The start of the World War II set a beginning to a mass mobilization of Soviet citizens as well as recruitment. The posters imposed national values of patriotism which central government saw as a key in the mobilization process. The theme of the posters started to focus more on the subject of war rather than domestic growth projects. As the integrity of the Soviet state became more endangered, the visual images started becoming more intense, expressive, and violent as well. As the World War came to its end, the Cold War between USA and the USSR has started. Both sides were actively spying on each other in an attempt to gather as much military secrets and other top-secret information as possible about the enemy. The USA and the USSR were also locked in competition over developing more inventions and weapons. Thus, during the Cold War, each side tried to portray each other's government and social living order as inferior, evil, and a great injustice to mankind. This, as a result, was inevitably reflected in the poster designs.
Даруй мне тишь твоих библиотек, твоих концертов строгие мотивы, и мудрая я позабуду тех, кто умерли.
To conclude, the Soviet propaganda posters have always kept pace with the times. They created images of role models for generations of Soviet men. Soviet propaganda became a defining aspect of the nation's very culture, spreading the aesthetics, values, and lessons of the Soviet ideology throughout the nation and beyond.
The political climate of the United States influenced the design of posters throughout time. American poster art first came into widespread prominence during the Second World War from 1941 to 1945, as propaganda played a critical role on the home front to boost public support for the war efforts. Prior to entering the war, the United States at that time had a non-interventionist foreign policy and had actively avoided becoming entangled in foreign conflicts and affairs. In order to aid in breaking away from this mindset of the US public and to promote commitment to an Allied victory, the United States had produced more propaganda posters than any other country fighting in the Second World War. These posters mainly conveyed positive messages primarily focused on duty, patriotism, and tradition. They rarely depicted scenes from the battlefield or war casualties. As this was during wartime, the American flag was a common theme that was regularly incorporated into the design of many of these posters. Cartoonified depictions and illustrations were the norm, rather than realistic depictions or actual photographs. In a time in which almost every industry was tasked with supporting the war effort, the animation industry was growing rapidly. The Walt Disney Company made their contributions to the war effort by authorizing many of their cartoon characters to be used in poster designs. Many of these posters were not designed by the government themselves, but chosen from the works of volunteer artists who submit their designs for the government to choose from. These posters also encouraged workers, businesses, and the general public of practices that would support the war effort, such as conservation, productivity, and secrecy. They were commonly placed in post offices, railroad stations, schools, restaurants, and retail stores.
Dum dum, beetle dum dum, beetle dum dum, beetle dum dum. There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He ducked and cover, ducked and cover.
By the end of the Second World War, and as the Cold War heated up, the use of posters have begun to decline as new mediums for promotion, such as television, gained popularity. However, posters were still used to a large degree, and their visual design retained their illustrated style. Although their messages had changed from one that is mainly positive to encourage support of the war effort, to one that drums up fear and brands the Soviet Union as an evil power and communism as America's mortal enemy. And with the threat of nuclear war, posters also depicted mushroom clouds and promoted safety and preparation in case the unthinkable were ever to occur. In conclusion, in both the Soviet Union and in the United States, culture and the political climate had shaped the design styles and the messages of posters originating from their respective countries, thus contributing to the creation of the distinct differences of posters from the Soviet Union and from the United States.